My name is Rachel Monroe, and I used to think I'd built the kind of life no one could shake. I had a steady job as an operations manager in Columbus, Ohio, a little gray house with matching curtains, a fiancé who kissed my forehead every morning before work and said, "You keep me grounded." It wasn't glamorous, but it was solid, predictable, safe. I believed safety meant forever, but forever ended on a Saturday night in November, over a bowl of pretzels and a few careless words. Evan had invited his work friends over for a game night. I cleaned the house until it looked like a real estate brochure. Candles, snacks, the whole thing. Around 10, laughter echoed through the living room, and I ducked into the kitchen to refill the bowls. From behind the half wall, I could hear everything. "So, Evan," one of his friends teased, "wedding plans making you crazy yet?" Evan's laugh drifted out, loud, confident, practiced, the kind of laugh he used when he wanted people to like him. He said, "Nah, Rachel's handling it. She's good at that kind of thing. Organized, dependable. Someone, maybe his coworker Tiffany, said, "She seems like the perfect wife material. You're lucky." "Yeah," Evan said, a pause long enough to sting. "She's perfect on paper, just not someone who gets me." There was an awkward chuckle, the kind people use when they sense a line's been crossed. My hand froze above the pretzels. "Don't get me wrong," he added quickly. "Rachel's amazing, just emotionally steady to the point it's kind of dull sometimes. Someone changed the subject. The conversation moved on, but my world didn't. I stood there in the kitchen feeling like the floor had tilted. The man who once called me his home now saw me as some emotionally colorless roommate, a placeholder. If you've ever found out what someone really thinks of you when they think you're not listening, you know that sting. It doesn't come as fire, it comes as frost. If you've ever discovered that the person you loved saw you as their safe option, tell me in the comments. And if you want to hear what happened next, make sure you subscribe, because this story, it only gets colder from here. I poured the pretzels into a bowl with hands that no longer felt like mine, walked back into the room, and smiled like nothing had cracked. I didn't confront Evan that night. Not because I didn't care, but because I cared too much, and I needed to understand what I just heard before I let it destroy something that had taken years to build. I finished the night the way I always did. I laughed at the right moments. I refilled drinks. I listened. I smiled. I played the role of the woman who had it together. Inside, though, something had gone very quiet. After everyone left, Evan wrapped an arm around my shoulders and said, "Thanks for tonight. You're always so good at this." Good at this. Hosting, managing, holding everything up. I nodded. Of course. We went to bed like nothing had happened. He fell asleep in minutes. I lay there staring at the ceiling, replaying his words over and over. Perfect on paper. Doesn't really get me. I tried to tell myself I was overreacting, that people exaggerate around friends, that maybe I'd misunderstood. But deep down, I knew better. Because that sentence didn't come from nowhere. It came from years of being the steady one. I was the one who remembered deadlines, the one who paid bills early, the one who noticed when his mood shifted and asked, "Do you want to talk or do you want space?" When Evan was stressed, I made plans. When he felt lost, I listened. When his career wobbled, I reassured him we'd be okay. I didn't do it because I had to. I did it because that's how I loved. But somewhere along the way, my steadiness became invisible. Or worse, boring. We met 6 years earlier at a mutual friend's barbecue. I was 30, already tired of chaos. He was 32, charming, restless, full of ideas. He said I made him feel calm. I thought he made me feel chosen. When he proposed 3 years later, he said, "You're the safest place I've ever known." I cried when he said it. I thought it was the highest compliment a person could give. Now, lying in bed beside him, I wondered when safe had turned into lacking. The next morning, everything felt slightly off. We moved around each other in the kitchen, polite but distant. He kissed my cheek on his way out and said, "Busy day today." I said, "Drive safe." We sounded like coworkers. After he left, I sat at the kitchen table long after my coffee went cold. I kept thinking about how many times I'd swallowed my own needs because I didn't want to rock the boat. I didn't complain when his networking events ran late. I didn't push when he forgot anniversaries and made it up with jokes. I didn't question it when he talked fondly about his wild years with an ex he called a disaster, but always with a smile. I thought maturity meant not being dramatic. I thought love meant being understanding. What no one tells you is that sometimes being understanding teaches the other person that you'll always adjust. By Sunday afternoon, the sadness settled in my chest like a weight. Not anger, not rage, just a deep, aching grief for the version of myself who thought being dependable was enough. I wasn't asking to be worshipped. I wasn't asking for fireworks. I just wanted to be chosen without comparison. And for the first time since Evan and I built this life together, I felt like I was standing in it alone. Anger didn't arrive all at once. It crept in slowly, disguising itself as clarity. By Sunday evening, the sadness I'd been carrying started to harden into something sharper, less fragile, less forgiving. I wasn't crying anymore. I was paying attention. Evan came home late that night, tossed his keys on the counter, and said, "Sorry, drinks with a client ran long." He didn't look at me when he said it. I nodded, the way I always did. "Did it go well?" "Yeah, productive," he said, already scrolling on his phone. Something about the way his thumb moved, quick, practiced, familiar, made my stomach tighten. Later, when he went to shower, his phone buzzed on the coffee table. I didn't reach for it. Not because I didn't want to, but because I didn't want to become someone who needed proof to trust her own instincts. Still, the buzzing kept going, and when his phone lit up again, the screen flashed just long enough for me to see a name. Lauren. I didn't recognize it. When Evan came back into the living room, towel around his neck, I asked casually, "Who's Lauren?" He barely looked up. "Oh, someone from work." "New?" He shrugged. "Sort of. Why?" "No reason," I said, as my pulse picked up. The word work had always been his favorite shield. Work explained late nights. Work justified secrecy. Work meant I wasn't supposed to ask too many questions. But this time, something in me refused to let it go. Over the next few days, the pieces started to surface, not dramatically, not like a movie, quietly, incrementally, in ways that made me feel foolish for ever believing this was just in my head. I noticed how often he smiled at his phone, how he angled the screen away from me, how his stories stopped lining up. Happy hour that lasted 5 hours, meetings that somehow happened on weekends. When I asked how his day was, his answers grew shorter. When I talked about mine, he seemed distracted, distant. One night, while we were brushing our teeth side by side, I said, "Do you feel like we've been disconnected lately?" He paused, toothpaste foam at the corner of his mouth, then said, "You're reading into things." That sentence hit harder than I expected, because it wasn't reassurance, it was dismissal. A few days later, I ran into Mia, one of Evan's longtime friends, at a coffee shop downtown. She hesitated when she saw me, like she wasn't sure whether to smile or apologize. "How are you?" she asked carefully. "I'm okay. Why?" She glanced around, then lowered her voice. "Can I ask you something without it being weird?" I nodded. "Are you and Evan good?" The question landed like a slap. "Why wouldn't we be?" I asked. Mia exhaled slowly. "Because he's been saying some things lately." My chest tightened. "Like what?" She hesitated again, then said, "That you're a great partner, but maybe not the right one. That he feels boxed in. That he misses emotional intensity." The word intensity made my jaw clench. "Did he mention Lauren?" I asked quietly. Mia's eyes widened just a fraction. "Enough." "Yeah, he did." And just like that, the anger snapped fully into place. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't one careless comment at a party. This was a pattern. He was rewriting our relationship in real time, casting me as the obstacle to his happiness instead of the person who'd stood beside him while he built his life. That night, when Evan came home, I didn't ease into the conversation. "Are you unhappy with me?" I asked. He blinked, caught off guard. "What?" "Don't deflect," I said. "Just answer." He sighed, rubbing his face. "Rachel, you're making this bigger than it needs to be." "Am I?" I asked, "because it sounds like you've been telling people I don't understand you, that I'm not enough." He looked annoyed now, defensive. "I never said you weren't enough. I said you were safe, like that was a flaw." Silence stretched between us. "You're twisting my words," he said finally. "No," I said, my voice steady. "I'm finally hearing them." His jaw tightened. "Why are you attacking me?" That question, "Why are you attacking me?" ignited something fierce in my chest. Because suddenly, I wasn't the woman asking for honesty. I was the problem. And in that moment, I realized something terrifying and freeing all at once. He wasn't confused. He was choosing. And I was done pretending otherwise. The anger burned hot for exactly one night. Then it burned out, leaving something colder behind. The house felt different after that conversation. Not louder, not tense, just hollow, like the sound had been sucked out of the walls. Evan moved through rooms without touching me. I moved through days without expecting anything from him. We were two people sharing space, pretending we were still a couple because neither of us had said the final words out loud. I slept lightly, ate mechanically, smiled when coworkers asked how wedding planning was going, and felt something inside me flinch every time I lied. On Wednesday afternoon, my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. I almost ignored it. Something in my chest told me not to. "Rachel?" a woman's voice said gently. "Yes?" "It's Mia." I stepped into the stairwell at work, the concrete walls cold against my back. "What's wrong?" I asked. There was a pause, a long one. "I wouldn't call if it wasn't important," she said, "and I'm really sorry to be the one telling you this." My fingers tightened around the phone. "Telling me what?" "He's been talking to Lauren for a few weeks now," she said quietly. "Not just casually. About you, about your relationship." The words landed slowly, like snow piling up before you realize how heavy it's gotten. "What exactly has he been saying?" I asked. Mia exhaled. "That he feels stuck, that you're dependable but not passionate, that he doesn't know if he made the right choice committing to you when someone else makes him feel more alive." Alive. I slid down the stairwell wall until I was sitting on the steps, phone pressed to my ear, heart thudding in my throat. "Does Lauren know he's engaged?" I asked. "Yes," Mia said, "and she doesn't care." That was the moment something inside me truly broke. Not shattered, collapsed. I thanked Mia, hung up, sat there until my legs went numb. By the time I drove home that night, the sky was already dark. The house greeted me with the same quiet indifference it had all week. Evan's car was in the driveway. He was in the kitchen scrolling through his phone when I walked in. "We need to talk," I said. He looked up, already tired. "Can it wait?" "No." He sighed and set the phone down. "What now?" I repeated. "How long have you been talking to Lauren?" His face went still, not shocked, not confused, caught. "Rachel," he said. "How long?" I asked again. He rubbed his temples. "It's not what you think," he said. "Then tell me what it is," I said. He hesitated. "Too long." "She reached out," he finally said. "We started talking. It just happened." "It just happened," I echoed. "And telling her you're unhappy with me, did that just happen too?" He didn't answer. I felt something drain out of me then. Not rage, not sadness, hope. "So this is who I am to you now, the obstacle, the reason you feel trapped."
"That's not fair," he snapped. "You're oversimplifying. I'm actually doing the opposite. I'm finally seeing things clearly." He stood up, pacing. "I'm just trying to figure out my feelings," I said. "At my expense." Silence fell again. I went to the bedroom that night and closed the door behind me. Not dramatically, just decisively. I lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the house settle, feeling like I'd lost not just a partner, but the future version of myself I'd been building toward for years. By morning, the despair was complete. I wasn't angry enough to fight. I wasn't hopeful enough to fix anything. I was empty. And that emptiness was the most terrifying place I'd ever been, because I knew I couldn't stay there.
The morning after everything collapsed, I woke up before my alarm. The house was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that usually feels peaceful, but this time it felt deliberate, like a pause before a decision. I lay there staring at the ceiling, waiting for the familiar wave of panic or grief to hit me again. It didn't. Instead, something else settled in. Clarity. Not the dramatic kind. The calm, unsettling kind that shows up when your mind finally accepts what your heart has been avoiding. I wasn't confused anymore. I wasn't searching for explanations. I knew exactly where I stood. Evan was asleep on the couch when I walked into the living room, his phone face down on the coffee table. I didn't touch it. I didn't need to. Whatever answers I would have found there didn't matter anymore. I made coffee, drank it slowly, let the bitterness ground me. When he woke up, rubbing his eyes, he looked surprised to see me already dressed, already composed. "You're up early," he said. "So are you," I replied. He nodded toward the coffee mug. "We should talk." "Yes," I said, "we should." He sat across from me at the table instead of next to me. The distance felt intentional, telling. "I've been thinking," he began, "about everything, about us." "I'm sure you have," I said. He sighed. "I never meant to hurt you." "I believe you," I replied. And I did, but intention isn't the same as impact. He looked at me, searching my face like he might find reassurance there. He didn't. "I'm just confused," he said. "I feel pulled in different directions." I nodded slowly. "I know." His shoulders relaxed as if my understanding gave him permission to keep going. "And I think I need time," he continued. "Time to figure out what I really want." That was the moment I realized how calm I felt. "No," I said. He blinked. "No?" I repeated. "No, you don't need time. You need consequences." His expression hardened. "That's not fair. It's honest," I said. "You don't get to keep me as your anchor while you explore other options." "I'm not cheating," he insisted. "I haven't crossed that line." "You crossed it the moment you started comparing me to someone else and deciding I came up short." My voice didn't shake. That surprised even me. He stood up, frustrated. "You're acting like this is black and white." "It is," I replied. "You're either choosing me fully or you're not." He ran a hand through his hair. "I just don't know if what we have is enough anymore." That word again. Enough. I stood too, my legs steady, my heart quieter than it had been in days. "Then let me make this easy for you," I said. "I'm done being an option." His eyes widened. "What does that mean?" "It means I'm stepping away, not to punish you, not to test you, but because I respect myself enough not to stay where I'm being weighed against someone else." He laughed once, sharp and disbelieving. "You're overreacting." "No," I said. "I'm finally reacting appropriately." I went to the bedroom and pulled a suitcase from the closet. I packed slowly, deliberately. Clothes, documents, a few personal things. Nothing that belonged to us. When I came back into the living room, he was standing there, stunned. "You're really doing this," he said. "Yes," I replied. "Rachel," his voice cracking slightly, "you're making a mistake." I met his gaze. "Maybe, but at least it's my mistake to make."
As I walked out the door, I felt the strangest thing bloom in my chest. Not relief exactly, but something close. Hope. Cold, clear, unapologetic. And for the first time in a long time, it belonged entirely to me.
I stayed at a hotel that first night. Nothing fancy, clean sheets, neutral walls, a space that didn't belong to anyone else's expectations. When the door closed behind me, I sat on the edge of the bed and waited for myself to fall apart. I didn't. I felt hollow, tired, stripped down to something honest. By morning, my phone was full. Missed calls, texts, voicemails. Evan, please call me. This isn't what you think. I'm choosing you. I just need you to talk to me. I read them once, then I set my phone face down and went to shower. 2 days later, Mia called. I thought you should know, she said carefully. Evan went to see Lauren. I closed my eyes. Of course he did. He told people he needed closure, she added, that he had to see if there was still something there. Closure, that word men use when they want permission to reopen a door they already slammed on someone else's fingers. I didn't ask for details. I didn't need them. The next call came sooner than I expected. Rachel, Evan said, his voice rushed and tight. Please don't hang up. I didn't say anything. I made a mistake, a huge one. I waited. Seeing her, being with her, it wasn't what I remembered, he said. It was awkward, forced. She hasn't changed. The spark I thought was there, it wasn't real. An image flashed through my mind, him realizing, too late, that nostalgia doesn't build a life. I kept thinking about you, he continued. Your calm, your steadiness, the way you actually understand me. I let out a quiet breath. You used to call that dull. I didn't mean it like that, he said quickly. I was wrong. I was scared. I didn't know how good I had it until you tried the other option, I finished. Silence. Rachel, he said softly, I want to fix this. I felt something unexpected then. Not triumph, not anger. Distance. Fix what? I asked. Your confusion or the fact that you lost your safety net? That's not fair, he said. It's accurate, I replied. He tried again. Apologies, explanations, promises. He said he'd cut off contact, that he'd go to therapy, that he'd prove himself. I listened, calmly, fully. Then I said, you didn't lose me because you were confused. You lost me because you didn't respect me. He went quiet. You don't get to come back just because your fantasy didn't pan out. I wasn't something you misplaced. I was something you took for granted. He whispered my name, like it might change my mind. It didn't. I hope you figure out what you're really looking for, but it won't be with me. I hung up before he could respond. That night, I blocked his number, then his email, then the messages that started coming through mutual friends. It felt clean, final. A week later, I signed the lease on a small one-bedroom apartment across town. Hardwood floors, big windows, morning light that filled the room like permission to breathe again. Mia sent one last message a few days after that. He and Lauren are done, she wrote. She left after a fight. He's telling people it was never serious. I stared at the message for a moment, then deleted it. The satisfaction didn't come from watching him fail. It came from realizing I didn't need to watch at all. He made his choice. I made mine. And for the first time since this all began, the weight lifted. Not because justice was loud or dramatic, but because it was quiet and complete. I wasn't chosen. I chose myself. 6 weeks passed. Not dramatically, not cleanly, just slowly, like healing usually does when no one's watching. My new apartment began to feel like mine. I bought a lamp I didn't have to compromise on, chose curtains because I liked the color, not because they matched someone else's taste. I placed a small bookshelf by the window and watched sunlight spill across the floor each morning like it was reminding me I'd survived something. I didn't wake up happy, but I woke up lighter. Some days were still heavy. Grief doesn't leave all at once. It circles back when you least expect it, in grocery store aisles, in quiet evenings, in moments when you instinctively reach for your phone and remember there's no one to update anymore. But the grief was different now. It didn't ask me to beg. It didn't ask me to explain myself. It didn't ask me to stay small. I thought about Evan sometimes, not with longing, not with anger, just with clarity. I realized something important in the quiet that followed everything. Some people mistake chaos for passion. They confuse intensity with depth. They chase emotional highs because they don't know how to sit with steadiness without feeling bored. That doesn't make them evil, but it does make them dangerous to someone who loves sincerely. I used to believe that being dependable meant being replaceable, that if I wasn't loud enough, dramatic enough, exciting enough, I would be overlooked. I don't believe that anymore. I understand now that the right person doesn't get restless in your calm. They don't need to compare you to ghosts. They don't weigh your worth against alternatives. They choose you, clearly, consistently, without hesitation. I wasn't rejected because I lacked something. I walked away because I finally saw my value. There's a quiet strength in choosing yourself without needing the other person to understand why, in leaving without slamming doors, in not rewriting history just to make your exit easier for someone else. Sometimes justice isn't watching them regret losing you. Sometimes justice is building a life so full and peaceful that you no longer care whether they do. I don't know what Evan learned from all this, and honestly, it's not my responsibility to know. What I do know is this: being safe is not an insult, it's a foundation, and anyone who treats it like a flaw is not someone you should be building on. If you're listening to this and you recognize yourself in my story, if you've ever been called too stable, too predictable, too easy to take for granted, please hear this clearly. You were not the problem. You were the mirror someone didn't want to look at. If you've ever walked away from someone who couldn't fully choose you, share your story in the comments. And if this story helped you feel less alone, don't forget to like and subscribe. There are more stories like this and more healing to come. Some endings don't come with applause, they come with peace. And this one was finally mine.